creating a positive mindset is not a switch you flip. So I want you to be kind to yourself. Try not to judge it. Try not to get miserable about yourself, but just start to create that positive mindset towards your own mindset. It's like the recycling symbol. It goes round and round. Hi, thank you for joining me for this episode of Intuition, Your Success Compass. Vicki, thank you for being here. I appreciate you listening, watching, being a part of this wherever you are and however you connect with me. I really do appreciate it. It brings such an uplifting and positive effect to my life that I'm going to use that as a subject today. And we're going to talk about the power of positive mindset and how that can lead you to happy, to success, but also some of the caveats around the wording that flies around now about just be positive. I don't believe in that. So let's get started. Our brains are so phenomenal. And this is coming from a layperson approach. I am fascinated by all the different ways that your brain works, that my brain works, that, come on, we have a similar DNA setup, right? That creates these cells and the gray matter and the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and all that. We have that in common, but your brain works differently than my brain. And I freaking love that because it means that there's a variety in this life, that there's so many fascinating conversations that you can have with people and so much that you can learn to understand about ourselves, and we're just beginning to crack the code on it, right? I am fascinated by it because I know it's the connection, one of the main connections with our soul is to continue the conversation that happens for you on a non-physical level and then process it through this computer we have, right? And depending on programming, literally and figuratively, depending on how you were raised, how I was raised, how the person next to us was raised, we're going to have different perspectives. We're going to look at it differently. And yet we have a similar template. It's just fascinating to me. I have spent the last 12 years, something along those lines, if I do the math correctly, with my brain, studying the connection between our physiological brain, our non-physical mind, the soul, the spirit, and our gut and our intuitive center, and how it just all works so beautifully together. And a lot of the times it works so beautifully once we get out of the way, which involves the brain. So the idea of neuroplasticity and how supportive thinking, supportive conversation towards self, feeling like you have value absolutely contributes to not only how you're experiencing your day, but what are you creating moving forward? And also how tuned in is your intuition? Because intuition only works well when our physical selves participate. Now, that's not to say you can't get messages or you can't be spot on if you are smoking 6 packs a day and eating crap and all that kind of stuff. You could. But the idea of honoring and having a clear sense of self and your health and your brain health absolutely contributes to the messages and how clearly it comes through. Just something as simple as if I have too much caffeine, mine buzzes. I can't get anything. And I love my coffee. And I know that I can have one caffeinated beverage, and then I have to go to decaf or half calf or something along those lines. Or I have to really spread it out if I want to have something like green tea or something along those lines. I have to be careful because if my body's frequency gets too hyped, I can't hear and intuit the messages that I need for my clients and for myself. For someone else, that could be processed food. For someone else, that could be smoking, like I mentioned earlier. For almost all of us, it's going to be alcohol. Anything that alters your ability to pay attention, it lowers your frequency when you partake in those things. It's not my place to say whether you do it or not. I'm just saying that know this, that if you're working diligently to raise your frequency and your vibration and to be in a supportive, positive mindset, alcohol, by very nature of its frequency, lowers us. It lowers the body. And that's why you feel more relaxed. Inhibitions go away. I have found it fascinating that I have never had more than a sip at a wedding. Boing. Oh, that's not true. I did have a White Russian back in the day. See, I don't need truth serum. I just have to tell him myself. I did have a White Russian. It was really good, I have to say. But it's not. I didn't like the way it lowered my frequency. And for the longest time, I thought I just didn't like not being in complete control. And then growing up as a child of an alcoholic, well, I didn't like that idea either. I wasn't going to be that. So just know that your physical brain and all of its beauty this is wildly connected to your soul's mind. And if there's something that creates interference or static, it could be one of the reasons you're having difficulty and maybe doing an intuitive reading for yourself or a card reading. Or if you've been very spot on, then all of a sudden you're like, hello, where'd you go? Just look at your diet, look at your day. Is it all stressed out and there's no room for stuff to come through? Our brains are so wonderful at adapting to situations, but then also hiding things from us that sometimes it can be very difficult to figure out what's blocking what's in the way. And I have found that the more the more I have my frequency up in what we would consider a positive mindset. I don't love the positive negative thing, but it's such a key word in the vernacular that I thought if I say anything else, it's just going to get lost in translation. So I'm going to use it. But if you think of a positive as a high frequency and a negative as a low frequency, if you want to create more within your life, that positive frequency is going to be attractive. The law of attraction is working whether you know it or not, whether you believe in it or not, but it is vastly impacted by our frequency and being in a higher state. So when I say positive, not as an equivalent to a higher energy frequency, because it's just everything's so much easier at a higher. It can be challenging to get there, and I'm going to cover that and also give you some tools and ways that you can start to pay attention to where your frequency is at and then help yourself to raise it because you're the only one who can do it. No one else can do it. You can go, you can have some body work done, you can have some energy work done. I promise you, if you have energy work done and you feel amazing when you leave, you did most of that. Your energy work person is simply a facilitator of your energy. Okay. So know that, take pride in that, and then do it somewhere else. Go for the sessions. Goodness, enjoy it, embrace it, work collaboratively with whomever your practitioner is, but recognize that you, in fact, are doing the work of raising your frequency, perhaps just by allowing yourself to lie on that table. So in my exploration of neuroplasticity and pathways and shifting and helping people to see how you can be brilliant as you were when you came in as a naked with no teeth being, trusting that this was going to be a wonderful learning experience, you have the capability of being that trusting and that brilliant in everyday life. And yes, I know there's things that you have to take care of. That's okay. These are the things we get to take care of. So in neuroplasticity, our brain in the idea of neuroplasticity, our brain adapts and it rewires and it creates connections and it takes experiences and, yeah, sometimes really ties them down tight within our brain. And then it's our job to look for those knots and understand them and undo them. I will tell you, both from personal experience, because I used to be quite the negative Nelly, just because nothing ever looked like it was going to work out. And I was not taught as a child to pay attention to how I felt, to even listen, we didn't even acknowledge feelings, but never mind, pay attention to how I felt so that I could affect change in my own life. So learning to go from everything is always wrong, the sky is always falling, to, no, actually, I really do believe that things are good, and I trust in our soul's process, and I trust in the capability of people. Sometimes trust in other people a little bit too much, but that's okay. It's part of the experience for me, is to learn to believe who they're showing me they are. In exploring all of that for myself, I ended up reading copious books on neuroplasticity, on positive mindset, on how to shift that, and then eventually took some trainings, did some practices with Seuss Casey, became certified for a while, but released that. Belief Free Patterning is her book and her website, and it's phenomenal work, and it's delightfully uplifting without being flowery denial. That stuff happens. I love her stuff. So also Shirzad Chamine. I'm actually in a program with him right now. I've followed him. I've read his book, Positive Intelligence, and so I'm now in a coaching program through his center because I just love the work and how he talks about, we call them PQ reps, which are like if you were to take a dumbbell and to build up your biceps, like you have to do these reps over and over again, but they're easy. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. These are just some, if you want to do some reading on your own, that I would suggest that you check out, because they follow up the studies that have been done. So many studies out there. I was going to quote a few, and then I decided, you know what? There's so many that if you were to search the effects on neuropathways from positive thinking or positive mindset, you're going to come up with a bunch of them. There was one I enjoyed. It was called it was done years and years ago, 2012 maybe. The Plastic Human Brain, Dr. Richard Davidson. That was fun because it did talk about how our mindset and how being kind actually impacts our own brain. We think we're doing it for someone else, but it impacts our own brain and how we feel and how our cells in our body just love it. Just love that high frequency experience. So have you ever been in a discussion and you go to say something and you can feel that's actually not your belief, it's not your thought? Like it was something that was there. Maybe you heard it over and over again as a kid, or it's a common saying, slang, or something like that. And you just believed it and you didn't think to question it. And then in that moment, you witness yourself. You're a witness to your own conversation and you're connected into how it feels. And you're like, actually, I don't believe that to be true. First of all, that takes a lot of self-awareness and it takes a lot of courage. So go you. That's fabulous. But in that moment, what was happening in your brain was all this configuration to bring all the information together to give you another perspective. And likely that stuff is coming up because you've decided that you just don't want to feel miserable anymore. Complaining feels miserable. And it leads us to more and more synapses and connections within the brain that lead us to want to do that. So I think of my brain as a yes machine. Everything I put into it, it's going to say yes to. So eat more sugar, yes. Eat Less sugar? Yes. It's just a yes machine. So then I have to think of, well, what's in my highest well-being for how I'm going to feel in an hour? And when you first start working with the idea that I have some say about what I think or how I feel, you will get tired of yourself. You will get so tired of your own voice that I have even said to myself, zip it, Vicki. I don't want to delve into this right now or even contemplate where that may have come from. I'm tired. I just want to watch this show. And I allow myself to, because we can't be in dissecting ourselves all the time. But as soon as you recognize, you learn, and you accept within your own being that I do have all of the power in how I feel today and in how I show up in the world, it becomes such a ripple effect that runs through you that you don't want to go back. And then it can also enhance your intuitive ability because you start to feel the dissonance between complaining and seeing a potential outcome or a higher outcome, positive outcome, supportive outcome, whatever you want to say. So you can feel like, oh, that doesn't feel so great. Now, all of us need to vent. We all need to vent. We're like little teapots. We need to let off a little steam sometimes. So I do not believe in toxic positivity. I do not believe in denying that you're hurting or something's going on. What I'm suggesting is that you start looking at it from a perspective of, okay, it's likely that it doesn't all suck. There's probably something here that works. And what is that? So you start training your brain, doing the reps, right? Bending those muscles, doing those squats. You start training your brain to look for what's working rather than what isn't working or hasn't worked in the past. You have that capability. You are wildly intelligent and empathic and spiritually aware, but you have to put the action in order for that to work. And it can be very difficult with people around you who are naysayers. In the past, I was in like a family unit that was so negative. It was almost like competition for who was more sick, who was more miserable, who had more things done wrong to them in that day. And I remember sitting there at one point early on in relationship with them, but also in my own awareness, thinking, it can't possibly be this bad. Like, life doesn't suck. And then people would get mad at me. They're like, Vicki, you always think everything is good. And I don't, but I think everything has possibility. And if you're telling me the truth of what happened and it was a traumatic event, well, I'm not going to sit there and say, just think positively, just see the other side of it. I'm going to empathize, but I'm also going to be aware that there's a time frame in which your brain naturally wants to move forward. Your heart naturally wants to move forward. And I'm just saying, show up for that, because it will give you an indication. You will give you, not to make it separate, but you will give you an indication of what feels right. So if you start tuning into that, okay, start feeling if what I just said was true, because we want to create this ripple effect. We want to create just this one little spark of what went well here, what worked in this situation without being false. I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm telling you it works. You don't want to lie to yourself. So don't mask, don't say, oh, it's absolutely wonderful if it wasn't. But do look for what went well in that situation. And then what will happen because of neuroplasticity, you will begin to see it quicker and quicker. And then it helps with decision making. It helps with showing up in your life. And it helps with creating those next steps for self, because eventually all those lower frequency models won't even show up. And if something happens, you'll see the pattern faster. And those new pathways that have been created will their little butt in your highest good for your benefit. So it also creates a ripple effect to those around you and to the energy fields, but also the emotions and the interactions. My partner's mom is always saying, "You are one of the most positive people I've ever met." And I found myself one day almost trying to convince her that I have down days. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I trying to justify that, yes, I am 96% in this higher frequency, but that's because of the work I put in. And now it just takes a little tweaking here and there. I get frustrated, but very rarely do I get down or negative about anything because I see the possibility in everything. But I could feel myself trying to justify and to be like, what's the word? Commiserate with things that don't go right and everything. And I just said, nah, that's how I'm wired because it's true. I wasn't always wired that way, but now I am. So the ability to cultivate positivity, to cultivate higher frequency, it contributes to a more harmonious and supportive environment for you, first and foremost, and then out into the world for yourself, and then out into the universe. You can have a joyously, joyously uplifting, wonderfully feeling, absolutely jubilant day and not talk to another person, and you will be impacting the energy of our universe. Isn't that freaking amazing? It's just amazing how powerful you are. And once you start to put this stuff into effect, you realize your resiliency and you realize that the things that used to take you out of the game no longer do it. And that you can be honest about a situation not being great, but you can also shift that situation and your perspective of it. When I've shared this before, but when my husband was passing, he was in the hospital and there was nothing else he could do. We were changing over to palliative care. And I believe she was a nurse practitioner, but the nurse practitioner and our physician's assistant, she was one of those, said, "I can't tell if you're this well adjusted or if you're in denial." And I laughed a little bit and I said, "I'm not in denial. I have known this was going to happen. I have seen this was going to happen, and I didn't get into the whole story with her, but I said, I just know this to be what's right now. And my heart is hurting ridiculously, but there will be time for me to do that after as well. He needs me to be present in this moment. And quite frankly, I need to be present in this moment because I don't want to miss a moment of this and regret later because I have worked with so many people who do that. So that resiliency helped me not sleep for a month on end and to keep showing up, but to show up without anger and to show up without resentment. The hurt was still there. The truth of the matter was right in front of me. I never want to suction another person in my life, quite frankly. And it was enough to give me the kudos that I was on the right path, that I absolutely was connecting into my own positive vibration, my own resiliency, and shifting some of those pathways in there. I'm so grateful I started the work before that too, because it really helped me to show up in that and then subsequent opportunities with others who were going through a really difficult time and then passing. So it's not like painting a smile on your face and saying everything is okay because that's not cool. It's not good for you. The truth will eventually show up, right? Because you're going to lose your stuffing. And with the practice of creating this mindset, and it will direct you to your happy because you will start to feel when something doesn't resonate with you, when someone doesn't resonate with you, when a situation doesn't, when food doesn't, when it's time to change up maybe your own spiritual beliefs. Maybe that'll shift, likely, because that's part of our expansion too. And then you begin to become grateful because it's truth that you're talking about. It's authenticity that you're living, and you're no longer lying to yourself about things. And yes, it does take having courageous conversations and showing up in not only with yourself, but with others. And sometimes in coaching, I have to be that one that says, I believe you can go have this conversation, role play it with me. What are we going to say? How are you going to be in there? And then what energy are you going to bring in to that? That is neural pathway work. That is the power of a positive mindset, because you begin to see how something could go well rather than it has to be a shitstorm or something along those lines. And we are inundated every day with messages of everything that's going wrong. And if we were given news of everything that was going well, we'd have a hard time believing that too. But it would be in such a joyous, fill you up kind of way. So if you have a gratitude practice, consider adding your neural pathway to it. Consider adding your brain to it. What did your brain do today that you didn't know it could do, or that it's probably done every day? Like, I crack myself up when I make a bad pun. My brain did that, and I love it. And I love that I didn't know it was coming and it just came out, and I get to experience it on the other side too. So it's these spontaneous offerings that it does occasionally. And my brain did that. And that's pretty cool. I was having a problem with this microphone right before I got on here. It was making me a little nutty. And then I'm like, take a breath, do a rep, which means taking a breath. For me, it often means closing my eyes and taking that breath, because there's so much going on out here and here in my third eye that often I have to take a breath. I have to take a breath to reset. So having gratitude for my brain that now knows that, I step back, I take a breath, and I figured out I just had one of the bolts upside down. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why it's not sitting right. And it kept more falling off. You had it. I literally had a screw loose. So had to flip it upside down and put it in the other way. So read directions. Who reads directions? I'm not going to read directions. It's more fun this way. So what is your relationship to your brain? Like when I do my conscious circuitry work with people, which is me intuitively tapping in, like people will come for a session, okay? And they'll say, it feels like this is stuck, or I don't know what to do about this. I can't get out of the stinking thinking about this. And I will intuitively tap in. And sometimes I see something completely different, because there's also the little pockets in the brain that feed us BS, until you become so willing to look at all the BS, it doesn't bother anymore. So when they come for the conscious circuitry, I'm looking at it intuitively to see what's going on in there. How are you processing what's going on? And is there somebody hiding behind door number 2? And I need to call them out kindly, but I need to call them out and say, okay, this seems like what's happening. Does that ring true to you? And I have to tell you, the percentage is pretty dang high that I hit on what's really going on. And then the conscious circuitry is some of this breathing. It might be some statements. We might be tapping. We may be screaming and saying, that wasn't fair, that wasn't okay, provided they're in a place that they can do that. And we may be looking at creating mantras or things to move forward on. But what we're doing is we're taking the energy that's so cramped up in there and we're raising it, shifting the brain, laying down a new pathway, and then giving the coordinates to where they're headed. So often there'll be work that just moves stuff, and then you're left standing there, well, how do I get home? I don't know what to do. And it leaves people confused. So when I went through and I put together my conscious circuitry work from all the studies and all the certifications that I've done, and then my own intuitive knowing, I took into consideration this massive connection you have with your gray matter and your heart and your gut to that soul level, and we take into consideration how to shift from a place that feels like a lower frequency to a place that feels like a higher frequency. It does not have to be this massive jump. And this is where I really learned that faking it till you make it is BS. Complete bunk. Because your system, your brain, your heart, your soul all knows when you're lying to it, right? You feel it. I know I feel it. I'm like, that's not true. And then there's a process of returning to self that's needed to feel like you can even move forward in this. So my point in all this is to point out that creating a positive mindset is not a switch you flip, right? Is that right? Switch you flip? Yeah. It's not a switch you just flip. It's possible to have amazing mindset and shifts and openings and clearings. Absolutely. I see it most days in my business. But it's also a consistency practice that's needed. It's those times where you're not with a practitioner. It's those times where you're driving and the gremlins show up. Okay, so I want you to be kind to yourself, no matter how many times you practice being kind to yourself. Likely something's going to sneak through, and it's just showing you a new level of awareness. Okay, so try not to judge it, try not to get miserable about yourself, but just start to create that positive mindset towards your own mindset. It's like the recycling symbol, it goes round and round, but it will help. Simple gratitude exercise of, wow, my brain did all of this. Do you ever stop and think what your brain did today? Probably not, right? So let's get into a gratitude practice of what your brain did today in a supportive way. I don't necessarily want to hear that it didn't allow you to do the dishes. I believe you, but I don't want to hear that. I want to hear what did it do for you, because we need to create more pathways to that. Did it get you to the bathroom to brush your teeth? Are you still breathing? I assume if you're watching this or listening to this, you're still breathing, because otherwise you would have croaked, been on the other side, and be tapping on my head in a whole different way. If you're still breathing, your brain did that. Let's start loving our neural pathways and our brain instead of beating it up so much. Okay? Gratitude practice. Being present in this. I don't know of a way to create a positive mindset on the pathway to happy without adding some present moment practices. That was a little hard to say. And that's pausing. Like, just pause. And when you pause, let's close our eyes and take a breath. If you're driving, please don't do that. Let's feel your fingers on your hands. Same hand, it's fine. Do the little violin thing. Feel your toes in your shoes. Where's your butt on the chair? It's all about where you are in spatial recognition, okay? So being present, if you come back to your body, if you simply remember to pay attention to one of your body, maybe you're thirsty. I'm very thirsty right now, but maybe you're thirsty. Maybe you feel a cold breeze and you need to go get a sweater. All of that can be used to cultivate a presence of mindfulness, a focus, which will actually help you to reduce anxiety. If you become present, your subconscious doesn't get to run away with the anxiety machine. Okay. I know this sounds like a lot, but it's not when you think that you're where you are already. Your brain has done all of this. We are bringing consciousness to it so that you get to decide how you want to feel about something rather than an auto program deciding for you. Some of the tools you could use, I love my support, my supplements. I love water. I am a big fan of lots of fruits and veggies because I know frequency wise that helps to raise your vibe. My magic mind is very much a part of every day for me in creating that balance and that sense of possibility and even probability, because there's a lot of B vitamins in it. If you're low on your B vitamins, that makes it incredibly difficult to feel any kind of hope, any kind of higher frequency. And there was a time where I was grappling with a little bit of what felt like sadness unrelated to anything I was working through, and then had my B vitamins checked, and they were well, once I had those, started doing the Magic Mind again, it increased it, because it helps for me to support my brain through my pie hole and make sure that I'm getting in all of the nutrients that are helpful to my brain. And I know that it helps to create a calmness in me. And that's the ashwagandha. And that's the fact that you can sign up for a subscription and you don't even have to think about it, and it just shows up. It's a beautiful thing. And you can do that subscription by going to magicmind.com/VickiB20. And you can get up to 56% off the subscription in the next 10 days. So chop. And then if you put in the code VickiB20, 20% off. And if you're already a subscribing member, don't worry about it. They're going to honor that anyway. Go put the code VickiB20 in. You're going to get 20% off your order. And so exciting that they're in all markets, but you're going to get the discount if you go through the link. And it's so easy to support yourself in this way so that it shows up on whatever schedule you decide is best for you. And then you get to reap the benefits of positively supporting yourself and helping to maybe reduce some of the jitters that coffee or tea or those beverages that you're reaching for give you, and they don't necessarily support. I love my coffee, but it doesn't support us once it gets to a certain place of anxiety producing. So before you reach for that cup in the mid-afternoon, maybe you take along the little 2-ounce bottle and you have a shot of that and enjoy it. And maybe you make that a moment of presence when you're drinking it. And what does it taste like? It tastes so good. It's actually hard sometimes to only take one. And it's not going to hurt me if I take more than one. It's a subscription. I want to make sure that I have my next days available. But sometimes it's hard not to do a couple of them, because it just helps me get in such a great state of mind that I want to keep going. And that's where peacefulness and mindfulness and all of that comes in handy. So head on over there, magicmind.com/VickiB20. I love my code, VickiB20. So that's a tool you can use. Maybe you have your own practice of mindfulness. Do you journal in the morning? Well, do you journal anytime? I'm not going to tell you when you need to journal. Do you take a moment to check in with yourself? Body scan. That's one way you can do it. You lower your shoulders. You take a nice deep breath. You start the scan at the top and just pretend you're one of those, you're like a little CAT scan. You can go all the way around your body, through your body, and feel, intuit, sense. Not everybody's going to get a picture. That's fine. If there's anything out of whack in there, that presence and doing that can help you be more in touch with your body. And the more grounded we are, the more physical we are, the higher we can go in your intuitive or your psychic practice. It's a collaboration. We must be grounded, physical in our body in order to connect to the higher realms. It's absolutely necessary. So body scan is a good way. Making sure that you're stretching your body in whatever way works for your particular needs. I'm a yoga Pilates lover. I haven't done bar or anything like that. I heard that's pretty powerful. But whatever works for you, the good stretch before you get out of bed in the morning, tapping in and just feeling the flexibility that's within your own body. And maybe you're working on developing that flexibility and being kind to yourself during that practice. Last night, Mike and I were doing yoga, and when there's a point where you're sitting down and they're like, okay, reach your toes. I can do that. And then they're like, put your torso against your legs and your nose to your shins or your knees. Yeah, that's not happening. So, but it was a good place last night because I was thinking about recording this and what I wanted to say, even though I fly off script a lot, what I wanted to say. And in that moment, I'm like, no, you're leaving the room. You've gone upstairs. You're already recording the podcast. Get back here and see if you can stretch just a smidge more. On the exhale, see if you can stretch just a smidge more. And it's a good reference for life, I think. Can I stretch just a smidge more? I don't think I'll ever be Gumby. And we were laughing about the fact that my arms are so short. Sometimes it's just a physical reality that I'm not going to be able to go around my knee and grab my ankle and stuff. But that presence of mind is so vitally important. So what can you do today, to this day, to stretch, to be present, to bring yourself to your body? Because you signed up to live this life in that body. The work that you do to feel and be complete in your mindset that this is an amazing place to be will help to create that path to happiness, which is also about success. So all of this relates to creating and manifesting the life you want to live. But I find a lot of the new age stuff with the manifesting, they don't talk about the work. There is work to be done. It's not magic mashed potatoes where you just add water and then poofy, you've got mashed potatoes. So some other things that you could do is some visualizing. If you're someone who doesn't visualize, well, then can you tell yourself a story, a good story? Don't be telling those bad stories. Can you tell yourself a story, like narrate what you would like to see in your life, what you would like to experience? If you are a very visual person, well, then get into the nitty-gritty details and see within your mind's eye and imagine the movie happening and create that picture of how you want to feel. Because a mindset is not about thinking. A mindset is feeling and then thinking about how to have the process line up with those feelings. Okay. It can be too heady if you think that the process is all about a positive mindset, everything is thinking. I would say everything is feeling, and then you connect the dots with your thinking. Okay. So visualize, tell the picture, tell the story, create the picture, envision how you want to feel at the end of whatever your intention is. And then what does it feel like to be in a supportive, positive, actually learn to like and love yourself place? What does that feel like? If you don't know just yet, that's okay. What does it feel like, look like to say something nice to yourself today? Start there. No, I'm not kidding. Start there. Say something nice about yourself right now. Good job. Okay. The other thing that can help to raise vibration, create happiness and success actually is, where's your act of kindness or acts of kindness? We can make it plural. I'm throwing down a challenge here. I encourage you to engage in random acts of kindness. Do things that you're not videoing and putting up on social media. Do stuff that feels right to your heart to want to contribute, and help, participate, and don't go looking for the pat on the back for it. It will return to you 1,000 times more than whatever you're contributing. I promise you. If you're doing it in a high frequency way, if you're doing it not for the accolades, not for the likes, not for the subscribers, but because you genuinely want to do it, it feels so good. I don't understand when people don't want to give, because I'm like, you don't realize what you're shortchanging yourself of. So you don't have to give away your whole self, but I encourage you to practice some random acts of kindness. I used to have a bumper sticker that said that. I said something else, but I can't remember what it was. Practice random acts of kindness and something else. Anyway. And then if you want to share it with a non-public, maybe your partner, your friend, or email me. But don't do it for the pat on the back. Do it because you would like to help someone and you understand there are psychological benefits of altruism, and it has an impact on your personal happiness, and it just feels amazing. And maybe you tell the story 6 months down the line if you want to share, but you don't rush right to looking for the atta girl, atta boy, atta them. All right. So I'm always going to come back to breath as a way of raising frequency, and I'll tell you why. It's not just because there's so many studies out there that tell you and suggest and that have studied the effects of taking deep breaths. It's because it was so hard for me. So hard. Like, people would say, just take a deep breath. And I'm like, I'm not sure how to do that, because I was in such a locked up survival state that just relaxing enough to take a deep breath into my belly. The first time I ever took a yoga class and they said, do a Buddha belly breath, I'm like, oh, no way in hell am I letting my guard down. I'm taking these breaths with one eye open. And it's taken me quite a few years to be able to close my eyes and trust and just take breaths. So as someone who likes to sing, it's just occurring to me now that all of this work would have helped my running a lot because I was always out of breath. But I bring it up because I understand how incredibly hard it is to do. It's not as simple as just taking a breath. I think anything we have that's autonomic and then we try to override it, right? Like our body and our brain and our brainstem and everything is keeping our breathing going. But the minute you say, now take a deep breath, it's like the system short circuits. So, but I know how incredibly important it is for clearing your brain and for getting into a place where you can even consider cultivating a positive mindset. Okay. So you can tell I get excited about this topic. Ran a little long here, but there's so much that that benefits from doing this work, micro movement, just a little bit at a time. So start with breathing, start with catching yourself doing something well, your brain, and being high five your brain if you can. And then take it to the place where you are practicing more and more, identifying what's going well instead of focusing on what's not or what's perceived to not be. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you in the next episode. Vicki Baird Coaching on all the social media platforms, and info@vickibaird.com if you want to come directly to me, vickibaird.com if you'd like to book an appointment. I am doing individual readings as well as the coaching, and I look forward to seeing you in the once a month workshop around the worksheets, or on here and your comments and being here in your beautiful energy. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Intuition, Your Success Compass. I appreciate you being here. If you would like more information about developing your intuitive skills, removing those blocks, and creating the life that feels the most successful to you, then head on over to vickibaird.com. That's VICKIBAIRD.com, and check out the courses, the groups, and the Spaces app that will allow you to be part of our community and know about upcoming events and specials. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.